Hey, welcome back to Train Signal. You're watching stuff to make your Active Directory life just a little more predictable. In this video, we're going to be working with monitoring stuff, auditing stuff, and how to also to maintain your Active Directory database. So some very cool stuff in here that it's really a bunch of little things that are really going to make a big difference. So we're going to talk a little bit about watching your AD stuff. Then we're going to talk about the monitoring tools in your toolbox. And then I'm going to show you how to watch who's doing what to your Active Directory. This is a big deal, especially if you have other people who have access to your server. Now, eventually, we're going to get to a point where we're going to start handing off some of our responsibilities as the lead administrator to other junior administrators. So we just want to be able to watch and see what they're doing. And then I'm going to talk to you about defragging your Active Directory database. Now, this is a very important element of maintenance as time goes on, and we're going to be dipping back into that NTDS util command line option that we were working with earlier. So let's go ahead and let's jump right into it. So here's the deal. Globomantics, it's ready. We have done a lot of work to it. It's ready to launch in the New York office, and you have taken solid precautions. We've made sure that we have plenty of backup media options to rebuild a domain controller in case it blows up. We've given ourselves some flexible options in terms of having more domain controllers so we can seize any operations masters in case a domain controller goes down. So we've got a lot of good stuff going on here, but here's the deal. We now need to figure out how to watch the domain controllers for any impending doom, because there's always going to be some indicators as time goes on. We want to be able to maintain that Active Directory database, though, because we want to get optimum performance out of it. We don't want people having to wait to log on. We don't want to have a lot of interruption in their processes. So I'm going to show you how to get that wrestled too. There's a lot of third-party tools out there to do a lot of the stuff we're going to be talking about. But here's the deal. Right now, all we have is what's built into Server 2008, so that's what we're going to be working with, at least initially. So let's go ahead and let's dip into the monitoring toolbox here real quick, because there are some pretty cool toys, I have to admit, inside of Server 2008. The initial couple tools here, these are going to be kind of no-brainers, and you've probably seen these before, but the Task Manager, yeah, I know. The Task Manager is nice for immediate gratification of seeing what's going on in your server right now. And then there's also the Event Viewer. And the Event Viewer, by the way, is right inside of your Server Manager, and it's underneath the Diagnostics tab. It's an easy way to view the logs that are created by the various monitoring tools. You would not believe how much stuff gets tracked inside of Server 2008, and the stuff that we can enable to be tracked as well. There's the Performance Monitor, which you're actually seeing over here in these nice, pretty little graphs with the little green grids. This is kind of a true classic. This guy has been around for a long time. And we can get very granular in terms of what we're able to watch about what's happening with your server. Now, it's not my favorite tool, I'll have to admit, okay, because there's some enhancements to Server 2008 that kind of make watching our server a little easier. One of those things is the Reliability Monitor. And the Reliability Monitor watches and it really tracks the changes in your system over time. And you see it's also over here inside of the Server Manager, over here in the screen capture. It's a very easy tool to use. It tracks anything that's been installed to your machine, any hardware changes. There's a lot of neat tools inside of that just to kind of see how things progress and if there's anything that might destabilize your server. And the last but not least, this is my new favorite item. These are the data collector sets, also over here in the diagnostics section in the Server Manager. It's probably the easiest way of tracking what's going on in your system. A lot of times, with Performance Monitor, we don't necessarily know what to monitor or maybe how to interpret what we have monitored. Well, the data collection sets actually generate very cool reports and very specific reports about anything weird that's maybe happening on your system. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to bounce on over to Client 1, and through Remote Desktop again, we're going to go over to DC1, and we're going to explore these tools and really kind of get our heads wrapped around them. So let's go ahead and bounce on over there now. All right, so here we are back over on Client 1, and we're going to go over to DC1 through the magic of Remote Desktop. And see, we're here in the Server Manager, but let's start off with the Task Manager real quick. We're just going to go down to the taskbar here, right-click, and select Task Manager. Now, this should be very familiar to you in some form, fashion, or another. The Task Manager allows you to see what applications are running, what processes are running, This is a nice new element here. I like the descriptions that they've actually added to the different processes. This is also true in Vista too, by the way. You probably have seen this, but you actually get to see what application that the process is actually attached to. So that's kind of fun. Gives us a little more detail and a better idea of what's really happening. We can go over here to the Services tab. Let's take a look at this. And we can see which services are running, which ones are stopped. A nice troubleshooting mechanism here. In the Performance tab, this should be very familiar to you by now. But in the Performance tab, we get to see the CPU usage in real time and as well as memory. So let's take a look at the Resource Monitor here too. Just another nifty little item. I'm going to go ahead and minimize my Windows Task Manager, but this gives us a little more detailed look at what's happening in terms of our CPU, the hard disk, the network, the memory, and there's also some fun help items down here as well. We're going to be talking about some of the stuff that's down here already, obviously, in this particular video. But if you just want to get kind of a bigger, broader look at what's happening with your machine, this is a real easy way to do it in kind of a nice, pretty graphical way as well. I'm going to go ahead and close the Resource Monitor and go back to the Task Manager now. In the Networking tab, we can see and kind of track what's happening with our local area connection here. Right now, you see we are connected, but nothing's really happening. So, also, you can see who is actually logged on as the users. You see here that I'm actually logged in here as Supercoach via the CL1, and I'm also connected via the remote desktop, right? All right, so just a quick look at the Windows Task Manager for real-time process monitoring, and it's really an easy way to get instant gratification in terms of seeing what's happening on your machine. All right, so now let's turn our attention back over here to the diagnostic section for our Server Manager. Let's take a look first at the Event Viewer. Now, if you've worked with Server 2000 or Server 2003, you're going to notice that the interface has changed quite a bit. There's actually some very cool elements about the Event Viewer, including the capability to create custom views, making it real easy to see what it is that you want to see. So right now what we're looking at here is we're looking at the administrative events, and I can go ahead and expand the errors here or the warnings and see exactly what's happening. Now these event IDs, you're going to get to know certain event IDs more specifically as time goes on, because there's going to be things that are going to happen to you over and over again. You're going to learn what that particular event ID is. It'll tell you when that particular event happened. Notice here that I'm looking at a 1030 group policy item. When I double click on it, you see that it brings up all of the events of that particular type, when they have happened, and you see that this actually happened a little while ago, and also gives me some general information down here at the bottom about that particular item. And you notice here that when I expanded this to this particular error, and let's see, what did we double click on? The 1030 error. It brought us to a summary page events section. You notice here that we have several other items underneath the event viewer. This is the administrative events that we were looking at earlier. But the event viewer basically gives the ability to look at a lot of different stuff. I can see here specifically underneath the server roles folder, the Active Directory domain services item, and see any events that might be important to me as I'm looking at this. These are all information events, as you see. You see that this is just an online defragmentation of the NTDS database that we're going to be taking a look at in just a little bit. Also, the DNS server gives me an idea of what's happening with it as well. So the event viewer gives us a massive amount of stuff. Let's take a look at the security logs section. We're going to be coming back to the security logs item, by the way, too, in this video. You see here that it keeps track of the log-ons and log-offs and all that stuff. There's some very cool auditing policies that I'm going to show to you in just a little bit, and we'll be coming back to the security log to view them. So I could probably teach you about 2 or 3 hours worth on every single element of this particular tool, but let's keep in mind that we're working towards certification on the 7640, and it's enough that we know where the viewer is and where it's at, because there's going to be different items that will be showing you in this video that are going to bring us back to the event viewer time and time again. So let's go ahead and reduce our view of the event viewer, and let's go into reliability and performance. Let's take a look at the monitoring tools. We're going to start off with the performance monitor. Again, the performance monitor is an old classic, and it's been around for a long, long time. It's been improved just a little bit in this version, but we have similar tasks that we can perform with this. Notice here that right now it's blank, because right now my performance monitor isn't monitoring anything. And so what I can do is I can add some counters, and I can tell it what to monitor and what kind of results I'm interested in. There's a huge amount of items that we can watch and that we can monitor. I'm just going to show you just a couple of quick items that are probably going to be of interest to you. But before I do that, I just want to kind of give you a quick disclosure. There's better ways, okay, to monitor what's happening on your system rather than this one, right? This is the tool that you're going to use if you have nothing else better to do with your time. Because it's going to take you a while to figure out which counters you actually want and how to interpret the information from those counters. Because there are a huge amount of items that we can actually watch. This can get very granular, including how many matches per second that we have seen in Active Directory, how many queries we've ran, threads, base searches, database ads. I mean, this is just under one category. I'm just going to scroll down here so you can see everything that we can track and monitor inside of Active Directory. Again, that's only under one of these items. So just a huge amount of stuff that we can watch. One big thing you're going to want to watch is memory. And I suppose you can add all the memory counters here. Let's just go ahead and do that here real quick. Let's go ahead and let's add the memory counters. So you see this little asterisk that tells me I've added all of my memory counters. That might be a little much, but let's just go ahead and tell it okay, and let's see what this looks like here. There we go. And so now I'm monitoring all of my memory items, and when you have a lot of stuff selected, like I've selected all of the memory counters down here at the bottom, as you see, I've got a lot of colors and a lot of lines happening on this particular graph. So the question is, what does all of this mean? And like I said, you can become a student of the performance monitor because it's a little more art than it is a science sometimes. Notice here that I just saw a huge peak and a huge spike on the green line. Let's go ahead and scroll up here and see what the green line is. That's page faults. Looks like I'm having maybe a little bit of a memory issue. And I should probably let you know right now that I have reduced the amount of memory for this particular machine because I wanted you to be able to see at least something interesting. So I actually went from 4 gigs to half a gig for this particular video. But you see that I had a huge spike on page faults. Something else is happening interesting. When you roll over the little lines, it's going to tell you which counter that particular line actually does represent. So we have kind of a little bit more of an interactive way to view what's happening here. It looks like we see a drastic drop in the blue line. Well, let's see. What's the blue line? That is the available bytes. So it looks like something happened there, maybe a replication or who knows what really, because I did reduce the amount of memory. And so now you see it dropped, and now it's going back and it's rewriting over the top of my previous set here. So again, not the most user-friendly, but it's one of those things that it's nice to have in your toolbox and know that it is available to you. All right, so I'm going to come down here. I'm actually going to get rid of all of these items. I did a Control-A on the keyboard. Here's a listing of all of my counters. And I'm actually just going to get rid of all of them because when you're monitoring stuff, it does take up system resources, okay? Now, usually not a lot, but anytime you're doing anything on a computer, even monitoring, it does take up some system resources. All right, so that's just a quick look at the performance monitor. Let's take a look at the reliability monitor next. This is another one of my newer favorite tools because it's so easy to use. It tells me a lot about what's happening on my machine. I'm going to scroll over here and let's just take a look. When I roll over and I click on one of these little eyes, these little information items, you see that that's a point on 7/1/2008. That's when I installed, or it installed for me actually, the security update for Windows Server 2008 64-bit edition. So this will keep track of all of your updates. Anytime something changes on your machine, looks like we have a failure, it's going to track it and tell you what's happening. Looks like we had a disruptive shutdown here on 7/3. So it just kind of gives us an idea of what's happening and what did happen on that particular day. if I click over here on 7.9, let's see what we end up with here. I'm going to bet, looks like I'm having kind of a little bit of a resolution issue here. I'm not able to see that. There we go. Looks like we have another disruptive shutdown. So this is kind of fun that we are able to track all the changes to our system all the way throughout. And we can even see exactly what kind of issues that the system might be having, or if it's just simply an update. So a very easy tool to use. Again, another one of my new favorites. Not a lot of things to configure here, obviously, because it's just a way for you to see what and how your machine has changed over time. Now, let's get into one of my new favorites, the data collector sets. This is one of my new favorite things, and new favorite ways to monitor and watch what's happening with my servers. Now, the data collector sets, what we have is we have some basic templates. Remember how I was telling you with the performance monitor, we don't always necessarily know what counters to use because there's so many of them. Well, with these data collector sets, there's actually a whole bunch of stuff, templates if you will, set up for us. They're templates that we can use to track the most common things that we need to watch for domain controllers. Active Directory diagnostics, LAN diagnostics, system diagnostics, and system performance. Now, we could actually use these templates directly to create what we call reports. And these reports give us some very interesting information and data. I'll just go ahead and go down here to reports and show you some of the, see if we have, do we have any reports set up already? Nope, looks like we don't have any. So let's go ahead and let's do a quick data collector set. Let's do some Active Directory diagnostics real quick. I'm going to right click on this guy and select Start. Now, it's not general practice to actually use these templates. Okay. What we really should do is we should create our own templates and use copies of these particular templates. All right. So right now we haven't done that. I'm just going to go ahead and run the Active Directory diagnostics. And when I run this particular data collector set template, when I go down here to Active Directory diagnostics, you see it generates a report for me. Now, right now, the collector is actually still running, and you see it's going to run for 300 seconds or 5 minutes. And so as soon as it's done running, it's going to give me information about what's happening on my Active Directory right now. So this is a very cool tool. And remember, we do have some LAN diagnostics, some system diagnostics, and system performance. Now, here's the deal. When you're doing data collection, again, it's going to take up resources. Now, not a lot, but if your machine already has a real heavy load on it, it may or may not be a good idea to run these things. You may even want to have a third party or maybe even a separate box actually running diagnostics for you. But most of the time, you can probably get away with running a short diagnostic collection and not have it impact the performance of your server. All right, well, this guy's going to run for another for a while yet, so I'm going to go ahead and pause the video, and as soon as it's done collecting all of its data and it has something to report for us, I'll come back and start recording again. All right, so the 5 minutes has passed, and you see that we have finished our little data collection, and it tells us right up top here, warning, the system is experiencing excessive paging. Total available memory on this system is low. The physical memory is not capable of handling the load, and it even tells you what to do. This is why I really like these data collector sets. Not only does it tell you when stuff is wrong, but it also helps to provide you with resolutions if it knows what the resolution actually is. So if I scroll down here, it gives me a basic resource overview, and I can expand the Active Directory stuff here. Let's see what we have in here. It gives me additional information about what's happening in Active Directory. Let's go into the CPU section. We'll go into the process. So we have all of this information that it has collected during those 300 seconds, and there's a lot of stuff. And obviously, the warnings are going to come up here to the top. Now, that's how to use the built-in templates. Again, let me go ahead. I'm going to delete actually this particular report and this particular data set because, well, we're done with it. And I want to show you how to actually create your own. Okay? So I'm going to go here into the user-defined section. And I'm going to right-click and go to New and Data Collector Set. And so now it's going to open up this nifty little wizard. And I get to name this guy. So Let's go ahead and name this Globomantics Start. Okay, since we're actually just starting this one. Now we can create our data collector set from a template, one of these 4 templates that are already present, or we can create one ourselves, which basically gives us an extreme amount of stuff to collect, similar to what our performance monitor has. Well, obviously, I'm going to keep it simple and use the create from a template option because I think they're so good. And now I can do the same Active Directory diagnostics if I like. I can do a basic data collector set in which I can basically add and remove counters, change the scheduling and such. I could do a system diagnostics set or system performance. So tell you what, let's go ahead and let's do a system diagnostics template here. And I can decide where the data is going to be saved. I'll go ahead and I'll leave it in the perf logs folder. So that way my little data collector set report knows where to find it. So I'll tell it next. And now I'm going to go ahead and save and close this and hit finish. Oh, and by the way, you could also run this data collector set as a different user if you wanted to. I'm just going to have it run as whatever it thinks is the default. Should be A-OK. And tell it to finish. So now I have my Globomantics Start data collector set here. It looks like I need to learn how to spell, don't I? And so here are all the items that are in the system diagnostics section. I'm going to right click on my data collector set and tell it to start. And you see that little green arrow that lets me know that that guy is going. Now I'm going to go down here to the reports section. I'm going to minimize the system section here real quick so it's just a little easier to see. I'm going to go into the user defined section and I should see here it is, Globomantics Start section. And you see here is the actual report data set. I'm going to go ahead and click on it here and let's see what it pulls up. Now remember that the Globomantics Start is still running and it's telling me that it is going to collect data for only 60 seconds this time. Again, we're just doing a system diagnostic, so I mean it's nothing that extravagant, nothing that extreme. Now, by the way, if I would like to change how these data collector sets operate, I can right-click on it and go into its properties. And now I can actually do some additional configuration here to it. I can schedule it. I can decide when it will stop and when it will end. So if I want to schedule a particular item to run, oops, looks like it's interrupting me for this particular report since it just popped up. In my warning section, looks like I don't have anything that extravagant except I have some informational items that I don't have any spyware running or anything like that. All of my basic system checks seem to have passed A-OK. And again, I have that whole performance section and all of this stuff down here. We already know about the memory issue. Even though it's telling me that the memory for this round was normal, we know that from the Active Directory diagnostic that, well, it's not. So these data collector sets, I got to tell you, I'm a huge fan of them. Tell you what, let me see if I can get back that properties. There it is. I can specify a stop condition. I can also have it run a task when the data collector stops. Probably the most important one you're going to need to know probably for the exam, just so you know, is the scheduling item. Okay, so I could actually add a schedule and decide when it will run, what time it will run, and such. So there are your data collector sets, just a couple of quick examples of those. Again, most of the time what you want to do is you want to use the user defined section. If you want to use any of these system templates, create your own user defined collector set and then grab one of these templates, okay? So yet again, another great way to monitor and watch your Active Directory by running some quick diagnostics. Most of them don't take very long, but they'll really help you figure out what's happening on your machine and seeing if you need to take any action, such as on this one, I need to put the RAM back in, right? All right, so let's go ahead and let's bounce back on over to our slides now, because now I've talked you through these basic monitoring tools. Now we need to start talking about auditing. So let's talk about how to watch who's doing what with your Active Directory. And so really what we're going to be talking about is kind of taking kind of a big brother role a little bit, being able to kind of watch over the shoulder of everybody that's in the mix. There are some new auditing policies that are optional settings in group policy. And the nice thing about these is that they can really allow you to keep very detailed track of changes that are made to AD, and this is going to become more and more important to you as you start to add IT staff. You're going to want to know what they're doing to your Active Directory and when. But here's the kicker. Not only can it track changes, but also who made the change, what the object was before the change, and what the object is now. And the capability to watch who's doing what to your Active Directory, you're going to find to be extremely valuable as time goes on. Now, here's the deal. Okay, in order to set up this auditing stuff, okay, there's actually 2 steps. And if you do one and not the other, it's not going to help you, all right? Well, first of all, we have to enable an auditing policy in your group policy stuff. Remember how we were messing around with that? And we need to enable it on either the default domain controller or on your default domain policy as a whole. And you can really do it on either place. And if you go into the Microsoft materials, you'll actually find them talking about both places. And I suppose if you really wanted to, you could turn it on in both places, both in your default domain policy and on your domain controllers. At that point, it's, I think it's a little bit of overkill, but you can do it. It's not going to mess you up. But here's the other thing that you have to remember how to do, okay? And I'm going to show this to you. You have to turn on the auditing component on the objects that you want to audit, okay? Now, here's the deal. You probably are not going to want to audit every single item in your Active Directory. If you do, you're going to create a lot of work for the server. So chances are you're probably just going to be watching over a few of the OUs. And I think what we're going to be doing with our demonstration here is we're going to watch over the New York OU. We'll be focusing in on that. We'll turn on our auditing for that particular OU. So when we make changes to New York, then we'll be able to track who made the change and what those changes are. All right, so now that we have going to talk through this a little bit, let's go ahead and let's bounce on over to the server. Let's go ahead and turn on auditing, and let me show you how to get this done. All right, so here we are back over on DC1, as you see. Let's go ahead and let's first start off by enabling the auditing policy. So I'm going to go into the features section here, and I'm going to do all this stuff right inside of the server manager. So I'm going to go into the group policy management and expand the forest and expand the domain. Let's go ahead and expand globalmantics.com and scoot everything over here just a little bit. Now remember, we could either enable the policy here at the default domain level, or we could also enable it on the domain controllers. Now, it's really kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of another, to tell you the truth, in which place you're actually placing this auditing policy on. Either way, in either place, you're going to be all right. Let's go ahead and let's just do it for the entire domain, okay? So we're going to go into the default domain policy, right-click, and select Edit. And now, let me show you where this particular policy is at. It's going to be under the computer configuration side. And we're going to go into Policies, into Windows Settings, and then into Security Settings. Now, inside of Security Settings here, it's actually going to be underneath Local Policies. Okay, so let's open up Local Policy, and let's go into Audit Policy. As you see, there's several policies in here. The policy that's going to give you the most detail in terms of who does what to your Active Directory is right here. Audit Directory Service Access. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn this guy on. And this is really going to be the only policy you'll need to in order to track changes in your Active Directory, okay? So I'm going to tell it okay, and now it's turned on. And let's go ahead and open that back up here. Let me talk to you about these 3 little boxes here for just a second. This one turns the policy on, and this will tell it what kind of attempts to audit. Now, when a successful addition, deletion, or change is made to anything in your Active Directory, or I should say at the very least to the organizational units and objects inside the organizational units that you decide that you want to watch, keep in mind that we have to go in and decide which parts of your Active Directory that we actually want to audit. We can watch and see who is going to have successes and who will also have failures. Now, successes, this is going to be pretty obvious. You want to see who's successfully changing stuff, and also ask yourself, hey, are they able to change that particular item? Hey, is Jamie actually able to create new user accounts, create new groups, make alterations inside of your Active Directory? And if you want him to, that's great, and we can actually confirm that he is able to make those changes to Active Directory. Now, if Jamie is not able to, but he tries, we can also log for failures and see if there's any problems with maybe Jamie's permissions and rights and what his particular account can and can't do. Now, if Jamie is not supposed to be in there making and creating different accounts and such, then we want to log both, and just to make sure that we don't have unauthorized access and somebody hasn't got into our Active Directory that shouldn't be. But the other nice thing about this is that you can also track what the object was, what it is now, and what it used to be. So, I mean, there's a lot of ability with this particular policy object. And don't forget, you can always go to the explanation tab over here and read more about this particular item. Let me talk to you just a second about SACLs, okay? System Access Control Lists. A SACL is what we're about to go over into Active Directory users and computers and actually set up right now. It's the second part of setting up your auditing policy set. All right, so now this guy's turned on. And by the way, I'm going to go ahead and log successes and failures. At least for the time being, I could always turn one of the two off too. So we have completed the first part, okay, of giving ourselves the ability to watch who's doing what in Active Directory. Now again, there are some additional options in here, and that's going to be your homework, all right, is to flip through these different policies and see what they are for. Some of them are going to be really useful to you. Some of them you're not going to use very often, if at all. All right, so we've got the first part. Let's go ahead and shrink up and close out of our Group Policy Management Editor. And now let's go and shrink up Group Policy Management. We're done with that side. Let's go into the Roles section now. Let's go into our Active Directory users and computers, into the Globomantics domain, and let's watch all the stuff that happens in the New York organizational unit. Now that is obviously going to include the stuff that's going to happen in our child organizational units, our child OUs down here as well. Or at least it can, and I'll show you that here in just a moment. Let's go ahead and right-click on the New York OU, and I'm going to go here into its properties. Now I'm going to need to get to the Security tab, and I got nothing up here. Let's go ahead and close that. Let's go up to the View menu and select Advanced Features. Remember that the Advanced Features option is going to give us more tools to play with when we're looking at our Active Directory here inside of Server Manager. So now let's go to the Security tab. Hey, there we go. And now we're going to go into the Advanced. Now remember, that was not available to me until I turned on the Advanced Features. And right, now in the Advanced Security Settings for the New York OU, you see the Auditing tab right here. Now, right now you see that we actually do have some entries in here. Let's go ahead and double click on this one. There are going to be some, it looks like there's one singular event that's already being logged. We're going to add one more, okay? We're going to go ahead and click here on Add. And now we're going to add in our Authenticated Users group, okay? So we're going to add in our authenticated users. So now what we're going to do is we're going to decide where we're going to and how we're going to apply this particular auditing entry. Now we can apply it for this object and all descendant objects. I want you to keep in mind that this all descendant objects means all of the other stuff inside of the New York OU, including all the OUs for computers, the users, all of that good stuff. So this particular setting is going to be just fine because it's going to track all the stuff inside of and to this organizational unit. Now down here we need to decide how we're going to be auditing. We're going to be selecting Write All Properties, okay? I'm putting a check mark here in the Successful tab because when a particular object is changed in Active Directory and that change is successfully made, then our auditing tools are going to actually write all the properties and all the things that happen to that particular object. Now I could also put a check mark here in Failed, although if an audit attempt is failed, we don't really care because, well, it didn't work. Unless, of course, you're trying to find out if there's a problem with someone's access. You're trying to get them to do stuff, but they're unable to. Or if you're trying to find someone who shouldn't be making changes to Active Directory, but is still trying, yeah, we need to watch those too. So we could write all the properties for the failed options too, and I think it's probably going to be okay. Now, here's another option down at the bottom. Apply these auditing entries to objects and or containers within this container only. We don't need to put a check mark in here because we don't want this particular set of access settings to affect only the New York OU. We want it to affect the entire set of stuff inside of the New York organizational unit. So we'll go ahead and we will tell it OK. And now you see here is our new auditing entry. We're really, auditing everything at this point from everyone who is in the authenticated users group. So anybody who has a login. We're going to be writing all the properties, and remember, this is basically recording all the changes that are made to an Active Directory object. We're not inheriting this from, and we are applying it to this object and all descendant objects as well. Now, I should probably show you here. Let's go ahead and double-click on this guy. We have other stuff that we could, you can get very specific if you want to about the stuff that you're auditing. You could select descendant computer objects and audit only what happens to computer accounts. Let's go ahead and scroll down here just a little bit. We could also only select user objects, so we can track only user stuff instead of everything that's in this particular organizational unit. And also for just organizational units too, we can also watch only those. Now, obviously, we can get very small in scope, very granular in scope if we wanted to, but that's not what we're after, right? We want to track all the changes that are happening to this particular organizational unit as it is. All right, we're going to go ahead and tell this OK and tell it OK again. So, and by the way, we've kind of effectively turned our diagnostic tools, our logs, into kind of a what's happening with Active Directory. Let's go into diagnostics now. Let me show you where you're going to find the entries for this particular tool. We're going to go into the event viewer, into Windows logs, and into security. Now, in the security log, this is where we're going to find any auditing attempts. And in order to make it easier to see what's exactly happening with what we're about to accomplish, I'm actually going to clear this log. Now, this may or may not be a good idea for you to do in a production environment, right? So whenever you clear the log, it's always going to give you the option to save it as well. Now, at this point in time, there's really not a lot happening on our network. I'm going to go ahead and just clear it. I don't feel the absolute necessity to actually make a copy of the log because not very much is happening at this point. All right, so our security and our auditing has been cleared out, so that way we can see the actual changes that we're about to make. Let's go into the role section now, and let's start changing some stuff just so you can see what this is going to look like as you're auditing. Let's go into the New York OU where we have all of our stuff happening in here. We're going to go ahead and we're going to right click. We're going to go to new, and let's make a new user account real quick. And we're just going to call this audit test. And we're just going to do a quick auditing test to see what these entries actually do look like. So I'm going to be creating this user, and then I'm going to turn around and I'm going to delete this user so you can see both kinds of entries in the security log. Tell next and finish. All right, and now I'm going to go ahead and delete this particular, whoops, let's try that one more time. I'm going to delete the user, and now I'm going to go back to my security log. Notice how it's so nice to very easily move back and forth here in the server manager. I love it. All right, so now I'm back over here in the security log, and let's find out, let's see what's going on here. As you see here, number 4726, I'm going to double click on this one right here. A user account was deleted. It tells me who deleted the account. Let's scroll down here. Here is the account name that was deleted. This was an audit success because as the administrator, as the SuperCoach account, I was able to successfully delete that particular user account. I can see a little more detailed information about it here as well. It's not nearly as interesting, but it's just a little bit more in a succinct item. All right, so that is the user deletion. Let's go back over here to our security log, and let's scroll down here, and let's see what else we have. Let's see here. We have some user accounts were changed. So we have a couple of those. A user account was enabled. Let's open that one up. Let's see what's in there. All right, let's see here. I've got SuperCoach doing the action again. Here's audit test. Looks like we have successfully enabled the audit test account. Now here's some additional user account entries here as well. An attempt was made to reset the account password. A user account was created. It's 4720 here. And again, Supercoach was the one doing it. And it gives me all the information that I need to know about what that particular account looks like. All right, and that is auditing. So it's not that hard. You just have to remember to turn it on in your group policy stuff. Then you have to make sure you go enable auditing for the organizational unit that you want the audits to happen in. Then we go into the security log and we can flip through the security log. And by the way, we can also do some filtering on the logs. We can create custom views. There's all this fun stuff over here. This is going to be another piece of homework for you because it's really easy to utilize. So get to know the security options set and the event viewer. Not necessarily for the exam, just so you know, because there's not going to be a lot of stuff about how to change how stuff is viewed in your exam. But just for your own convenience and your own peace of mind, get to know these tools over here. They're going to help you out quite a bit. All right, so I have shown you how to do auditing. We have one more item that we need to tackle. We need to learn how to do some maintenance on the Active Directory database as a whole. And so for that, we don't really need the server manager to tell you the truth. Let's go and let's talk about doing maintenance because we're going to be moving into the command line next for our next set of little activities that are going to help make your life a little bit easier. So let's go ahead and talk about the process first. Then we're going to come back and we're going to do a little defragmenting of your Active Directory database. So, just like every other part of computer or any other mechanical beastie, every once in a while you have to give your Active Directory database a bit of a tune-up. And there's just a few tools that I want to talk with you about. We're going to be dipping on over into the NTDS util tool again. But here's the deal. Every so often, you are going to want to run some maintenance activities on your Active Directory database to improve its performance. You're going to want to recapture some disk space. You're going to want to make that database file more efficient. And also, Microsoft might tell you different, but with any database stuff, sometimes weird things happen. Okay? And so there are some tools to help check for and prevent some of those weird things from happening on our Active Directory database. So what we're going to be talking about is how to run some regular maintenance. Okay? And just a few commands that will help us to do that. And here's part of the reason why we need to run this maintenance. When stuff gets deleted out of your Active Directory, when you delete user accounts, you delete computer accounts, whenever you delete anything, your Active Directory database file itself does not get any smaller. Okay? It takes up the same amount of space on your hard disk, even though you've been deleting stuff out of it. Well, that's not always necessarily the best thing, because really you have the equivalent of having empty space in your Active Directory database file. And to have your Active Directory running at its highest efficiency, we want to just run a couple of NTDS util commands on it. And let me kind of talk you through what these crucial commands are, and then we're going to turn around and we're going to use them. Now, this one we've already used once. This is activate instance NTDS. This is the beginning command that allows us to connect the NTDS util utility to the Active Directory. Then we move into the files context. Now remember, last time we were in the IFM context, the install from media context, and that gave us install from media creation commands. Well, the files context gives us additional commands. It gives us the ability to compact, which basically is what really when we talk about defragmenting your database. And by the way, defragmenting your database isn't that much different than defragging your hard drive. The exception to this one is that instead of like simply moving stuff around on the disk, Compact actually creates a separate copy of your ntds.dit file, your major database file. So when we run Compact, it creates a separate copy, and then we have to take that new copy and rename it and move it back over and delete out the old stuff. Okay? And don't worry, I'm going to show you exactly how to do all of this. There's another command called integrity, and this just checks out the database integrity, make sure there's nothing weird happening with that. And then there's one more, semantic database analysis. You notice that these commands are very English, right? I mean, they're not hard commands. There's not a lot of special stuff that you'll have to do with them. they're pretty easy to get your head wrapped around. But the semantic database analysis basically checks the consistency of the database to make sure everything is where it's supposed to be. And if there's something that's not where it's supposed to be, it'll tell you, and it will provide any solutions that it thinks that there may be need for. We have seen NTDS util once before. We're going to see NTDS util once again because I'm going to show you how to run these regular maintenance tasks, compact, integrity check, and the semantic database analysis. I'm going to show you how to run them. They're very quick, very easy, and you want to do these every so often, maybe once a month, once every 2 months, depending upon the activity of your Active Directory. So let's go ahead and bounce on over there, and let's give this a whirl. All right, so here we are once again over on DC1. Pretty much exactly where we left it at. So let's go ahead and let's bust into NTDS util, and we're going to see about getting into our files context. But before we do that, remember our first command is always going to be activate. Learn how to spell here. Activate instance NTDS. So we're going to actually connect NTDS util. Nice typing, coach. We're going to connect our NTDS util to our current running Active Directory service, and there we go. And so now that we are actually connected to NTDS, let's go ahead and see if we get into the files context. Oh, looks like we are unable to do that. You see that it's telling us that Network Directory Services, NTDS, is running. Now we need to stop this service before binding NTDS util to the Active Directory database. Now, let me tell you just a quick note that Active Directory Domain Services is actually a restartable service now. Now, this is a new thing with 2008. If you have any experience with 2000, 2003, you probably know that the only real way to get into Active Directory and actually mess with a database is actually restart your machine into Active Directory Restore Services mode. And we don't need to do that necessarily all the time. Now, there are going to be some instances where that's going to be necessary, and we'll talk about those when we get into a different section of our video. But what we need to do is we need to turn off our current Active Directory service. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our Start menu. We're going to go to Administrative Tools, and we're going to go to Services. There we go. And you'll see here that Active Directory Domain Services, let's go ahead and expand this guy a little bit. Active Directory Domain Services is currently started. Let's see if we can stop the service here by clicking on the stop. Now it's telling us that when Active Directory Domain Services stops, these other services will also stop. Do we want to stop these services? Well, let's give it a whirl. Tell it yes. And we'll see if that will actually work. Now, there may be times when Active Directory Domain Services may not necessarily want to stop because there may be an additional process happening like replication. And if replication is occurring, Windows Server is not actually going to let you stop and interrupt that particular operation. So just so you know for the future, you may end up trying to stop Active Directory Domain Services a couple of times before it actually does stop. Yep, and see, there we go. We're at an instance where Active Directory could actually not be stopped. And tell it okay, and we're just going to keep trying it again until this guy actually does fully stop, because, I mean, there we go. All right, so it only took us 2 tries. That's not too bad. Now let's go back to our command line and back to NTDS util. So let's go into our files context now. There we go. Since Active Directory Domain Services, also known as NTDS, is now stopped, we can get into files. But you're not going to be able to get into the files context until you get that Active Directory Domain Services to a stopping place. All right, so let's just go ahead and just do a quick help command here real quick to get a list of the tools that are currently available to us. The one that we're most concerned with at the moment is compact2 and this little percentile S. Remember that I was telling you that when we compact our database, it's actually going to make a separate copy of the database. And that separate copy is probably going to be slightly smaller and, well, defragmented, but it is going to be a separate copy. So let's go ahead and let's run that one first. We're going to be actually compacting our ntds.dit file. Okay, so we're going to type compact2 C:/, and we're just going to dump it to the C drive real quick, just so it's easy for us to find. Now you can compact it to anywhere you like. Now, Under normal circumstances, when the database is defragged, the compacted file is usually smaller than the original file. Now, in our case, it's probably not going to be what the actuality, due to the fact that, well, there just hasn't been that much activity on our Active Directory database up to this point. I mean, yeah, sure, we've been doing some stuff to it, but I mean, we're still kind of in the preliminary stages of our network building, so there's really not going to be a lot of change in it. All right, so it's going to tell us here that it is recommended you immediately perform a full backup of this database. And if you restore a backup made before the defragmentation, the database will be rolled back to the state it was in at the time of that backup. All right, well, that's good advice. At this point, we would probably go into WB-admin. We would make a system state backup. You already know how to do that, so I'm going to skip that one for the time being. All right, so now compaction was successful, and here's something else that we need to do, though. We need to copy the new file, which is at c:/ntds.dit. I'll show you that new file here real quick. Let's go over to the Start menu, to the computer, and to the C drive. And here is our compacted database version. All right, we'll close that. And the old one is at c:/windows/ntds.dit. And we already seen that in a previous video. And we also will need to delete the old log files, and here's the command to do that. So after you compact, ntds.util actually tells you exactly what you need to do. Now, in order to make this happen, we need to quit and quit, because we need to quit the file maintenance context, and we need to quit the ntds.util command. So now what we need to do is we need to copy we need to basically just type in exactly what we see on the screen here, c:/ntds.dits. That's the new database. And we're going to copy it right over the top of the old database, which is in Windows/ntds/ntds.dit. And we'll put in quotes, and we'll hit the Enter key. It's asking us if we want to overwrite the old one. Well, normally when you compact a database, yes, we do, because technically we should have already ran that backup right after we compacted it, right? Yes, that's true. We didn't do that because we're slackers, all right? Let's just face up to it right now. Just kidding. We're not slackers, right? We're going to go ahead and tell it to overwrite here. We'll tell it yes, and it shouldn't take very long. Bada boom, bada bing, and that file is copied over. Now, there's one more command that we need to run. Delete c:/windows/ntds/*log. Now, here's what we're going to be doing. Okay, we're going to be deleting the transaction logs for the old database that was not compacted. Now, the transactions logs basically keep track of all the stuff that's happened to the database. But when you create a new copy of the database using the compact command, the logs no longer match the database. So we have to delete the old logs so we can make new logs for the new database. Okay? So I'm just going to hit the Enter key, and it's going to delete any log files. All right, so piece of cake so far, right? All right, so now that we have compacted the database, we deleted the old database by overwriting it with the new database. Now we're going to go back into ntds.util. We're going to activate the instance ntds, and we're going to go back into, actually, you know what? Yeah, we're going to go back to the files. Yeah, that's exactly what we're going to do. Now we're going to check the new database for integrity. So I'm just going to type in here the command integrity, okay? And hit the Enter key. And it shouldn't take very long because, well, our database isn't very big. And it's been freshly compacted. So it looks like the integrity check was successful. Everything is A-OK. If something was not OK, it would, of course, give us a message and let us know. Now, it tells us that it's recommended that we run the semantic database analysis to also ensure consistency as well. So if we would now type the help command, and let's see, do we have that database consistency item in here? And I'm not seeing it. So what we need to do is we need to get out of the file maintenance context, by typing quit, not exit. And now let's type in help for the ntds.util context. And semantic database analysis is right here. So let's go ahead and move into the semantic database analysis. I really like about NTDS Util is that the commands aren't all weird. You know, they're very English commands, and I like the interactive interface that it has as well. So now we're going to move into the semantic database analysis checker mode. And let's just type the help command here and see what we have available to us. We have obviously the help option, question mark, check quota. We're not worried about that. This is what we are concerned about. We're concerned about go and go fix up. Okay. Now the go will run the database analysis for us, but it won't do anything. It'll just tell you if there's a problem. Now go fix up will not only run the database, but it will also try to fix any problems that it finds. So I'm a big fan of go fix up because if there is a problem, I just want to fix it right then. I don't want to have to figure out what else is there. Now before I run that go fix up though, you see this last command, verbose. We can turn the verbose mode on or off. Let's go ahead and let's turn it on so we get all of the information about what is there. So I'm going to do a verbose on. All right, now the verbose mode is now enabled. Now let's do a go fix up. And verbose just gives us more information than just a blank screen. You know, I mean, you'll see it here in just a second. It just tells us that, wow, that was really fast. Well, our database isn't very large, so, and we haven't done a lot to it at this point in time because we're kind of still in the building stage. So we have ran the semantic checker. Everything came back okay. There's no problems with our database. We saw that these procedures were pretty fast, pretty easy. They didn't take a lot of time. Let's go ahead and let's type quit to get out of semantic checker and quit to get out of NTDS Util. So these are the database maintenance tasks. I mean, they're not that complex. You probably want to compact your database, I don't know, every month, every 2 months or so. And then make sure you run integrity and semantic database analysis on it just to make sure that everything is A-OK with the database. Okay, well, that wraps this particular section up. Let's go ahead and let's exit out of our command line here. One more thing before we go and wrap this up. Do you know what we forgot to do? Yeah, you're right. We forgot to restart Active Directory domain services. Okay, well let's make sure that that's running here. Okay, so we just simply select Active Directory domain services and we click on Start the service. And by the way, you remember all those services that stopped when ADS stopped? Well, they're going to restart too. So you don't have to worry about going through and restarting like 4 or 5 different services. All you have to do is just restart this guy and he'll start everything else that it needs. Okay. All right. Now we're going to go ahead and stop messing around here on the server, go back over to the slides and wrap this up. All right, so here we go again with a few more vocabulary words. Nothing that extravagant here this time, just a few. First of all, remember that ntds.dit is the actual database file that holds your Active Directory objects. So I wanted to give you a quick reminder of that. The compact command for ntds util is the process and actually the command that starts the process to recover disk space by removing empty space and repositioning data on the disk for optimum read time. It's also known as defragging, and don't forget that the compact command actually does produce a new copy of the ntds.dit database. Also, integrity. A database is said to have integrity when all the records hold exactly what they're supposed to hold. Now, if you're familiar with databases at all, basically databases are made up of rows and columns. A row in a database is called a record, and a column is called a field, just in case you're wondering. And a database maintains its integrity as long as the records all stay together. Okay, that's kind of the short version of that. This isn't a database class, just wanted to throw out that term. And what I really want you to understand is that if a database has integrity, that's a very, very good thing. Okay, if a database is corrupt, that is a very bad thing. Okay, all right, so moving on here, let's talk about what we should be able to do after watching this video. So you should now be able to use the task manager to watch performance in real time. Use the event viewer to see what's going on in your machine. Use the reliability monitor to monitor changes in your domain controllers over time. We're showing you briefly how to use the performance monitor, and generally, like I told you earlier, there's better tools out there, and you're probably going to use this if you have nothing else better to do with your time. and you have no other tools available to you. So, again, you should be able to use one of my new favorite tools, which are the data collection sets, to track Active Directory and the domain controller performance. So those, again, are some of my favorite tools nowadays. You should be able to enable the auditing policy for the default domain controller GPO or for the default domain for object and account access through directory service access. You should be able to view the results of your auditing policies in the event viewer. Showed you how to do that. Remember, that is in the security log, okay? And also, I've shown you how to use NTDS util to defragment your database, check for integrity and consistency of that database as a whole as well. So, there's a lot of little stuff that we have done in this particular video, and they're all just little maintenance tasks. But you know what? With the conclusion of this video, we've actually accomplished setting up our entire New York office Active Directory structure. Man, we have made some significant plans for disaster recovery. We are ready in case something does blow up. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be leaving New York now, and we're going to be expanding to Chicago. We're going to be setting up a child domain for the Chicago office, and we're going to create some more DCs. But don't worry, we will be coming back to New York in this video series. So don't be too lost and forlorn. New York isn't going anywhere, but we're going to be expanding now to the city of Big Shoulders. So some good news. So I will see you in the next video, and we're going to be setting up a whole brand new child domain. See you there.